Boarding crashes to report at Wheaton. There's one on Roosevelt Road at County Farm. And farther east, there's a collision on Naperville Road at Butterfield. In Mount Kennedy, the delays kick in at Cumberland. It's 25 minutes O'Hare to downtown. Quicker in the express, outbound 21 minutes downtown to the airport. Edens, 15 minutes either way between Lycook and Montrose, but the eastbound spur has delays from Waukegan Road to the Edens. Inbound Eisenhower, delays are between Manheim and Harlem, 36 minutes, 390 to downtown, outbound 29. Stevenson, 29 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Ryan is 18 minutes from 95th to downtown. Northbound Tri-State, a little bit tight approaching the Eisenhower. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Sunny early this morning, then becoming partly cloudy by the afternoon. Highs in the mid-80s. We have a good chance of a sprinkle overnight. Finally, 30% chance of showers. Lows in the mid-60s and a chance of showers and storms tomorrow under cloudy skies. Highs in the upper 70s. 67 right now. Next news at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and want to get to a discussion of the weekend violence in big cities throughout the country, starting in Portland. But first, Mike in Cherville, you're on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Yeah, Don, I want to why are people so naive? Why is the right so naive? The whole concept of Black Lives Matter is a falsehood. Cops are not hunting black kids, and we should be screaming that every day on the radio. And one other question: can anything be done about these governors and attorneys general not prosecuting crime, just letting people go after they're arrested? That's my comment.
Thanks for the call, Mike. I mean, they're good questions, or that's a good question with respect to governors, mayors, attorneys general, and then you have the sovereign immunity issues. You have to show sort of criminal involvement, conspiratorial involvement in a criminal enterprise, I think, to reach politicians when it comes to things like non-prosecution culture, putting violent criminals out on the streets and $500 bond, as is the protocol from Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx, for example.
Yeah, or letting them out, she had 1,000 people who were convicted of armed robberies and manslaughter who were out on electronic monitoring.
As well as gun crimes, and that's right. And that's up significantly. That's a 40% increase. Just the people facing murder charges on the county's electronic monitoring program. That's a 40% increase year over year, August of 2019 versus August of 2010. So you're putting more and more people on the streets. And here's what people inclined to violence do on the streets. We're seeing it play out in real time, tragically. Portland, over the weekend, Trump supporters clashing of sorts with Antifa and the elements that have controlled Portland streets for some 3 months. And this is what happens when one Trumpster, as they say, is identified.
Hey, we got a couple right here. Hold it out. Right here. Are you okay? Okay. No. Okay. Hey, watch out, bro. She's trying to help him. She's the next trying to help him. So let her help. Hey, let her help.
There is a video of that shooting. You see the shooter and some other individual run after they shot and killed this guy on the streets of Portland. Later in the evening,
his name is Aaron Danielson. Sorry for interrupting. They just released his name.
Later in the evening, Antifa had an Antifa gathering on the streets of Portland, the streets they control. This Antifa member had this to say as word got around about the killing.
Y'all are not angry, you're not paying attention. If y'all are not angry, you're not with me. Everybody needs to realize what's going on in these streets. Our community
not sad that a fascist died tonight was the reaction. And so now what are Democrats to do as they're finally realizing that the majority of the country, overwhelming majority of the country, is not down with violence and lawlessness on the streets of urban centers or not so urban centers like Kenosha. Mark Meadows was on Meet the Press with that yapping little terrier, Chuck Todd. And that's the play that Chuck Todd was trying to make, as other Dem politicians were, all working in concert with one another. Meadows wasn't having it.
I wanted to start with this. The president on Thursday night painted a picture of what he said would be Joe Biden's America. And I look at the violence this week, Mr. Meadows. This is in Donald Trump's America. How much responsibility should voters be giving the president for his inability to keep the streets safe?
Well, I mean, you can try to reframe it that way, Chuck, but that's just not accurate. I can tell you that when we look at Kenosha, in the phone calls that were made to the governor of Wisconsin, we offered help. Help was denied. You know, you want to talk about Donald Trump's America. Most of Donald Trump's America is peaceful. It is a Democrat-led city in Portland that we're talking about this morning, who just yesterday denied help once again from the federal government.
And, of course, Ted Wheeler followed suit, a la Chuck Todd, in suggesting that the problem in Portland is Donald Trump. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Indiana Senator Mike Braun, Republican from the Hoosier State. Senator Braun, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good to be back on.
So is Trump responsible for the violence on the streets of America?
Yeah, you got to realize that in the time I've been there, a year and a half, a little bit more, the Democrats, their forte is taking facts and spinning them into something that they want you to hear. I mean, let's look at it. These places have been run 3, 4, 5 decades by the same governance, and all of a sudden you want to turn that around and blame it on someone else. Trump was the personification, the embodiment of people fed up and frustrated with that kind of spin and what we've been seeing in the cities. And we got to be careful because we generally get outmaneuvered by the other side when they try to spin it, just like Chuck Todd did with Mark Meadows. Mark is one of the more astute individuals I've met out there in terms of not falling for it. I got to know him fairly well during the impeachment process when there weren't many of us willing to come to the microphone to call them out for what they were doing. I was proud as a freshman senator to do it. It is a battle we're going to be in, and Trump's best chance for getting reelected is being played out on TV night after night in these places that have gone to lawlessness and lost. That's why you get the real estate business as busy as it is. People are moving away. They're voting with their feet, not only for their businesses, but also where they want to live.
Yeah, and a lot of Illinoisans are moving into your state, that's for sure. But President Trump is scheduled to visit Kenosha tomorrow. Governor Evers sent a letter saying basically that we're concerned that your presence, what it will mean for Kenosha and our state. I'm concerned your presence will only hinder our healing. And I'm concerned your presence will only delay our work to overcome division and move forward together.
Well, that, again, is sounds like an eloquent statement. That is completely wrong in the sense that Trump is going there, I think, to stand up for the silent majority, for those of us that for years have witnessed how this idea of bigger governments personified at the federal level for all of us, and it's been running almost every big city. We can't fall for that. And I think the fact that Trump is going there, thank goodness, it shows that there's a voice for many that have felt frustrated for years because we've gotten swept along with this nonsense that more big government, control like they have in these large cities, is actually better for the common individual. That's not the case.
Something interesting happening in Northwest Indiana. You've had a handful of mayors, and the word is that more may be following, leaving their party, leaving the Democrat Party and coming over to the Republican Party, ostensibly in part because they no longer recognize their party as it pertains to the maintenance of peace in communities.
Well, I think that's smart, and that's happened throughout Indiana, not just in the Northwest, where I'm from. The southern third of the state is arguably culturally and fiscally more conservative than any part of the state. Used to all be blue dog Democrats. Everyone has basically switched county by county to a party that does reflect Main Street, middle America, and you're going to find that even in the Northwest. We found there was an appetite for that when I ran back in 2018, and I think we carved out more votes out of that first congressional district than any Republican had before for the things that are playing out in front of us. When you're talking about defunding the police, cop-free zones, condoning this kind of violence. I was invited to the acceptance speech on Thursday. We had stuff going on in the state. I couldn't go. Look at Rand Paul and his wife leaving that. If he hadn't been surrounded by security, he claims he would have been, taken out possibly. And that type of stuff people can see, and I think it's going to be the thing that takes Trump where his numbers were looking bad. I don't think it could have played out any more visibly to show that we can't go that route. And I'm glad to see mayors are making the smart, common sense thing to do up there.
Vice President Biden, as you know, has been, pretty much sheltering in place this whole campaign. Today, he's venturing out, going to Pennsylvania. What does that say that now, with less than 70 days to the election, he's changing his tune? I mean, he told David Muir and Robin Robertson on ABC, we're not going to campaign unless it's absolutely 100% safe. Then his numbers start to fall a little bit, and voila, he's ending up in Pennsylvania. Well,
I think that's just the impact of what's been playing out. They know the polling has gone up. Trump's pivoted through a couple polls, Rasmussen and Zogby, to where it's basically a toss-up, and as recently as a month or two ago, I don't even think those of us that know what the right point of view is would have figured it was going to be this tight. But the case is making itself. Democrats through the deep state and the federal government, and by tolerating and abiding this in these largest cities that have been Democrat strongholds forever, it makes sense. And I think the more he gets flushed out, he's going to have to acknowledge some of the inherent contradictions, and you're going to also see his weaknesses in terms of how you would ever imagine him leading a country like ours in times like these. So I'm glad that that's being forced. Sad that you have to use polling and focus groups to get yourself out of the basement.
And by the way, on some of the more recent polling in battleground states, Trump is up outside of the margin of error. So there's really been a move the last 3 weeks, and hopefully he builds off of, I think, what was a very successful Republican convention.
I agree, and I think that you couldn't have written a political novel any more interesting than 2020. I thought 16 took the prize, but that's the divide we have in the country. The loudest voice in the media is generally controlled by the other side, and the proof, in my opinion, is in the pudding. What have they given us? $1 trillion structural deficits. All this effort you spent through the federal government has piled tons of debt that our kids and grandkids will have to take care of. That in and of itself, and how this is playing out in our major cities, should tell you that's not the template for success down the road.
I want to ask you about this bit of controversy you were involved in a few weeks back when you seemed to make a peace offering in the direction of Black Lives Matter. I mean, I think it got twisted up a bit, but I just wanted to get your reviews here on our show about what you think about Black Lives Matter, the organization that's being funded by corporate America, that's being held up by all the professional sports leagues, with maybe the exception of the PGA. What you think about them as a force for positive improvements in this country, or a force for division and devolution into some of the lawlessness and violence we've witnessed?
That is very simple, and I was disappointed with Tucker Carlson in that he didn't check the information out. He clipped a snippet to where the entire discussion was about the movement in general and peacefully protesting. Obviously, you've seen that's crossed the line over the last couple months, and there is a distinction between Antifa, BLM.org, and what began as what any of us should be okay with, and that's if you've got a grievance, peacefully protest it. Do it in the way that the Constitution was set up to handle it. Obviously, that's been co-opted by radical, in this case, a Marxist group that espouses points of view that are so far off of mainstream and what this country's about. It shows you how hot the political environment was. And when it comes to qualified immunity and what the police do, they've got to be protected. Who in the heck would suit up for a job that's gotten that dangerous and that is that important? On the other hand, the few bad apples that do surface now and then need to be held accountable. But it's gone so far from that to where we're now dealing with the other side trying to generalize this across our society. If we do not have police that come into the job that they're doing with protection, and when we came out, that was in an attempt to make it clear and to try to eliminate frivolous lawsuits. Tucker didn't, really research that either. It's a moot point. It is so quickly pivoted from that to law and order and the craziness that's going on. As long as I'm there, I've weighed in more on reforming the cost of health care. I get involved in issues because we normally get outmaneuvered. We're slow-footed as Republicans and conservatives. I want to make sure that our voice is heard, and that means we do engage, but we stick to the principles that we all believe in. That's what we got to get better at as a party if we don't want to be on the curb in the long run.
Speaking of law and order, just on another topic of law and order and accountability at the national level for bad actors, like perhaps the former head of the FBI, perhaps the former head of the CIA, and others. Do you expect that Durham investigation to be completed? Do you expect whatever is going to be recommended here before maybe even in the next 24 hours, but certainly before the election?
I do, because all along, two individuals in the Senate, Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, who heads the Homeland Security Committee, and Lindsey Graham heading the Judiciary, had some hearings, and I knew that they were going to occur, and Graham's, I think, is over. Johnson's is still in process, so I think we're going to see more from him. Also, Durham's been working on this for a long time. Barr has said over the last few weeks that it's likely to be released at least a month or so ahead of the election. And I think that needs to be, because we have to have that information out there so that it's fully vetted to show what was going on when, some insiders in our own government looks like they tried to weigh in to thwart Trump's campaign and been working against him ever since he's been elected in one way or another. Remember the Mueller report, remember the impeachment process, all trying to offset what I said earlier was the embodiment and frustration of many of us with things that were in place pre-Trump. I hope that does come out. I think it's a valuable piece of information that, again, adds to how people should vote this fall.
He is Indiana Senator Mike Braun, Republican from the Hoosier State. Senator Braun, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, this is Jay Farner, CEO of Rocket Mortgage. Making the right financial decisions has never been more important. We can help guide you to those right decisions now, when they matter most. Mortgage rates are near historic lows, so when you call 8338-ROCKET or visit us at rocketmortgage.com to start your refinance, you'll be well on your way to saving money every month. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 3.375%, APR 3.59%. Right now could be a great time for you to take some positive financial steps forward with a cash-out refinance from Rocket Mortgage.